Hello, hello, Eastern Ace friends. It's Philip Wilkerson back again with another episode of Conversations with Bob and Phil. We have a great lineup today, and we are joined by two special guests, which I'll let Bob introduce. But before we get into it, we want to just do some quick announcements. Next week is the week. I don't know. Okay, never mind. That's not the next announcement. The next announcement is that if you have want to engage with employers, they're doing the professional exchange, which is virtual this year. You can definitely check out all the wonderful employers that want to show what they, offer in regards to internships and jobs. So I definitely signed up to a few of those virtually in the coming year. And so I'm really looking forward to that. So take advantage of that resource. And then without further ado, that's right. That's the next one. We have the conference. This is it. We've been waiting for this for about 2 years, we back live in person. And so we're so excited. Yesterday, I attended a newcomer event, which was really well done by Kristen and Joe. Just well done, really engaging and really got me excited to meet some of the newcomers. I remember my time as a newcomer, but next week is it. Join us, AC. Have a good time. And now also Bob made me aware is that if you cannot come for the full time, there's still availability for 1 day registration. So if you want to just pop in over, if you're in Philly and you want to pop over, please think so and consider doing that. But without further ado, Bob, why don't we introduce our guest?
So, no, thank you, Phil. Happy to be live from the Atlantic City Boardwalk today because why not? Obviously, you want to get prepped for the conference. Come down early, stay later, enjoy it. But so thankful to have two really good friends join us today. Chris Miciek from Thomas Jefferson University and Casey Hilferty from Gwynedd Mercy University. Both of you, hello.
Hello, and thanks for having us, Bob and Phil and Bob.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
So, just in general, I have the good pleasure of throughout this past year of working there. We didn't really also announce that currently they are the co-chairs of the technology committee. And I've had the good pleasure of being underneath them in their committee, doing the Twitter chats and really amazing virtual space. So I think this is going to be my question for you. I know you're heavily involved in Eastern ACE, but what was some of your early, your first time getting involved with Eastern ACE through technology? And so, Chris, go ahead and share your thing. And then Casey, you go next.
Thanks, Phil. So how did I first get involved with tech with Eastern ACE? I mean, kind of goes back to I've always been doing tech within career development. I mean, even before I was working university side, back in the 90s, I was in a boutique career executive coaching firm. And I was the guy teaching the clients how to use this thing called the internet for their research. And we're talking dial-up modems and things like this. Like, do you have a computer in your house? No. Okay, we're moving on to a completely different topic. Yes. Can you get to this thing called the internet? So it's always been a feature of stuff. So I've always gravitated towards the tech side. And when I joined Eastern ACE in 2015, 2016, saw there was a technology committee, because not all the regionals have technology committees. We do. And now, it's like, well, that's obviously where I need to hang my hat and where I can contribute to the larger association. It's a space I know. And so I just got on the committee, much like you did this past year, just as starting as a member. And, I spent the last couple of years doing co-chair stuff and having fun with that as well.
And what about you, Casey?
Yeah, mine's a little bit different than Chris's. So I actually went to a very local conference near my university in 2018 when I really got into the field, and presenters from the University of Delaware were talking about social media usage as a professional and mentioned getting on Twitter. And I had not realized that Twitter was a resource that so many professionals were on. I think that I had the kind of view that many of my students do, that they're like, you're networking via Twitter. Are you sure that's the right source you're using? And I really don't remember exactly how I stumbled upon the Twitter chats, but I did. And the folks that were on the chat were always so welcoming, and the topics were so relevant and engaging that when it came time for committee signups, I thought, since technology has not always been my strongest area, I want to improve myself more in that way. Let me sign up, become a member, see what it's all about. And then I started doing the Twitter chats, and I led that for a few years. And then this past year, I jumped up to co-chair, and it's been a really fun experience.
No, that's fantastic. And really, for those who have engaged in the Twitter chats, it's always great to engage with professionals that you may never have met in person, but you can share ideas. And the thing about the Twitter chats is there's catalogs. I love the fact that if you have a meeting or you can't jump on, you can always go check back what the discussions are kind of doing. So kudos to all that. With the conference less than a week away, tell us your best piece of conference advice. So we had our newcomer session yesterday. What's one piece of conference advice that you have for someone coming for the first time or hasn't engaged in a while for whatever reason? What's the one thing that you can impart some knowledge on people? What would it be coming to Atlantic City next week?
I'm going to go, and I'll let Casey say why. She's not jumping on that one. Single piece of advice, and we actually run workshops for some of our students on how to conference. Single most important thing, pace yourself. Don't feel like you need to pack it all in. Don't feel like you're beholden to somebody else to do everything. Pace yourself. It is exhausting. Introvert, extrovert doesn't matter. You're in a high intensity learning and engaging space, a heavily social space, and you're burning energy like crazy. If you need to swap out a session for a nap, take the nap. Because odds are you're going to be up later than you expected. Because it's pretty hard to say, not going to bed when everyone else is going out and more networking is happening in the evening. So pacing yourself, best thing you can do to make it a great experience all around.
Yeah, I just have to echo Chris's advice. I'm not able to attend the conference this year, so I'm going to be watching from the sides and hoping that folks are tweeting out kind of the good tidbits about everything. But absolutely making sure you're pacing yourself. For many people, it might be their first time going back to this larger event space. So just really knowing your own limits to make sure that you are feeling comfortable, drinking a lot of water. Even if you're by the ocean, it's still probably going to be pretty toasty next week. So, just making sure that you're taking care of yourself in addition to soaking in the information.
I love that. I love that. Funny too. You actually said pace yourself because, I only got one pace and that's full tilt. You know what I'm saying? Turn up to 11, dial 11. But I really love the stories you shared about getting involved. And Casey, I really resonated a lot with you because funny, oddly enough, I did get involved more with Eastern ACE through the Twitter space, similar to you. Even though I went physically in person, it was that virtual space that got me connected. And so one of my things I want to, ask for both of you is now you talked about preparation for the conference, right? How can someone effectively use technology per se after the conference, whether it's how they, if you have any tips about taking notes or using it to network afterwards, what are some of your post-conference technological tips that you'd like to share?
Well, first, I always like to advocate for fully charged devices. I always get in trouble for not having my phone fully charged. So, there's still time to pick up a portable charger if you need it or plot out where the outlets are. I like to use the Notes app on my phone. It's a little bit lower tech, but I think it's a lot easier than sometimes always just jotting something down. If you're able to type out something quick, whether it's grabbing someone's contact information or just taking some quick notes from a session, maybe you want to connect with someone on LinkedIn or Twitter afterwards. I think that that's really helpful to go through And it's also nice when you like come back and you're feeling refreshed, you know, being able to share that out with your team members who might not have been able to attend the conference. And really being able to reference that information has always been super helpful for me whenever I've gone to an in-person conference. And then just, you know, obviously put in a plug for requesting on LinkedIn, and then engaging with folks on LinkedIn, and not just sending that request and then never doing anything with it. You know, sharing information, liking posts, all that kind of stuff that we like to tell our students to do about networking, that it also applies to us.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do a lot to improve on everything Casey just shared. I mean, for note taking in sessions, I use Evernote, have for years, and have a similar practice going back to the office, or if it's a long plane ride or train ride, using that time to go into the notes and actually build a report for myself. When I was early in my career, I would take that report and hand it up to my boss and say, these are the takeaways, and here's my recommendations off of this that maybe we can implement. And now that I'm a director, I find it useful still for me, kind of coalescing, but also then sharing it back down to my team. Here's what I found of value, and encouraging them to do a similar process of reflection on the learning experience. I'm actually a little concerned that with us being back in person, we'll see a drop in the digital connectivity that we've seen the last couple of years. And my concern there is I think we got a little bit better at the follow-up that Casey was touching on when we were in these virtual spaces, watching during sessions and keynotes, the chats just explode, and people sharing their LinkedIn, and people connecting in that real time, and seeing follow-ups, because we're meeting everybody in a virtual space. So that's how we're conducting it. And now I'm a little concerned when we get back into the physical space, not that I'm not looking forward to it, but that we're going to default to the business cards and the follow-up that Casey mentioned on LinkedIn, that there's no real follow-up and stuff, and we don't get the conversation, keep the conversations going a little bit more like we've seen over the last couple of years. So I'd encourage everyone to, build the time in and do that extra, make those connections count. I mean, it's hard. It's, when you meet a dozen people, you're not going to be besties with all of them. And maybe unless you're Phil. I mean, Phil's besties with everybody in the conference, the association at this point. But if you're not Phil, you're probably not going to keep up with all dozen of them, but you're going to, keep up with at least a couple of them and grow those relationships.
No, I love that, and love the fact that we've embraced some of the technological divide that has kept us away, but now obviously going back in person, defaulting to old ways that may or may not have worked very well, but just because we're back in person, and it'll be interesting. But I'm going to ask a future-facing question. So I'm going to ask a question, and I'll talk a little bit why I'm asking it, so you have time to think. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but I was in a recent discussion about the future of universities, and someone in our little group discussed, well, we're just going to do talent so differently, and talent cultivation and identification and acquisition. In the next 10 or 15 years, and this is going to be very broad-based, so you can take it where you want to, but what piece of technological advance will career services lean into to make our world very differently? So whether during the pandemic, leaning into legitimately Zoom, where Zoom was an option but rarely used, or leaning into how CRMs have opened up the process for more users, quicker interactions, things along those lines. So Casey, I'll start with you. And what are some of the things, or even to be more simple, what are some things you're looking for to be simplified by technology in our world in the next few years?
I know from my experience, my team at my university, we've been hiring more, which I'm sure many others have been going through as well. And we've noticed we've been able to hire folks that aren't just in our tri-state area because we're able to do the virtual interviews and having more virtual connectivity. And I think that's been really helpful, because we were able to hire somebody who came to us from Utah instead of, hiring from the 6 universities that are nearby our campus. And that brings a lot of new perspectives. And new information that maybe they're doing out there on the West Coast that we can definitely benefit from. But I do think that there's going to continue to be, our students are going through more virtual interviews, more virtual onboarding, and also a lot more discussion about what hybrid and remote work really looks like. How does that look into connectivity? Are you going to be at a job where you're needing to be on Teams the whole time, sending a message to a boss to make sure you're still at your computer every 15 minutes? And I think that's going to kind of shake how we counsel our students in what are some red flags about when you're looking at a new position. You know, the idea of remote is excellent. And I think many jobs can be successful in a hybrid or remote environment, ours included. But also, where are we kind of burying our issues? Are we trading in a commute for needing to be stuck in front of the computer for 8 hours straight without a break, which wouldn't be happening in the office? Like, I get up and I go talk to other people and, you know, go connect with others, go fill my water bottle, all those kind of things. But just in talking to others, I think that teaching our students and alumni what it really looks like to work in a digital space is going to be very different, especially as new technologies are coming out and new old technologies are phasing out. Like, it's not as close, but, you know, Internet Explorer is gone. So what are the other things that are going to be gone? I'm not saying I think LinkedIn or anything like that are going to be gone in the next 5 years, but what's going to be coming up on the up that's going to be a different thing that we're going to be using? So I think there's going to be a lot of learning on our part and hearing and listening from our students and see what they're seeing out in their internships and their jobs, just to see kind of where we end up. But I think that there's a lot of unknown, and it's going to be really interesting to see where we go.
Yeah, I mean, Case is making some phenomenal points on this, and I agree with everything she's just laid out. Bob, I'm going to push back a little bit. I think the 10 to 15 year time frame is an optimistic framing. I think we're looking at more a 5 year. We've got a lot of things that have been going on in the economy. There's lots of things. I mean, applicant tracking systems are 20 years old, but we haven't started to pay attention to like the real nuts and bolts of how that affected the job search until a few years ago. Then we started paying attention. We're starting to see with technology, I mean, it's always been there, but we're starting to see conversations emerge in larger society around the ethics of technology. I think one of the biggest challenges we're going to face with tech is there's a lot of ethic and a lot of DEI stuff that is impacted, and those conversations aren't happening a lot, and they're starting to. But so I think, you know, some of the most pressing tech issues aren't going to be, in fact, be tech issues. They're going to be, are we getting up to speed on ethics and unintended consequences or unforeseen consequences? And often that's the developer or the researchers behind a particular piece of technology didn't take the time to consider impacts on certain populations. And I think we need to lean into that. I've watched our field for the better part of 15 years have conversations around the future of work, including the tech piece. And, you know, the tone is always kind of let's be aware of what's coming so we can prepare our students, without finding our voice and defending our students and our alumni and saying, well, wait a minute, maybe that's not a good idea or a good practice, or here's maybe improvements to make to how this technology is affecting things, so that we're not creating this future that ends up being a dystopia, but it saved our budget a little bit, and it saved our time a little bit in the now. And that's hard stuff to get into. It really is. But we can have those conversations, and I think it benefits us if we do. But as far as the tech stuff, I think we've seen increasing pressure on the work from home. And we've seen how a lot of business leaders in this country have responded with calls to return back to the office. And we know that's a complicated mix of real estate investment and other things that's driving all of that stuff, as well as, lack of trust in their workforces. But those kinds of issues are going to come to a head at some point. And I think Casey touched on something really brilliant is, are our institutions, are our offices equipped to and preparing students to walk into and be effective as hybrid or work from home employees or remote workers? I mean, do we know what that looks like? There's not a lot of stuff out there. And this might be a space that we can move into as a profession to say, partnering with industrial and organizational psychologists or others, that study workforce and workplace and stuff. And hey, the tech is changing things. So how do we effectively do this so that we maintain our agency and so we don't have some little management bot sitting on our laptop, making sure our mouse jiggles, a certain amount of times. And we fight that by getting an app that jiggles the mouse so I can be checking on the pasta I'm cooking for dinner for my family, because I don't want to be sitting at the computer for 8 solid hours because I got rid of the commute. But like AC said, now I'm not moving anywhere. But I think there's a lot of space for us to watch what's going on with the tech and the social issues caused by it and step in and do more to equip our students so they hit the workforce better prepared than previous generations of students in terms of having their own agency, understanding where they fit into this, and knowing they've got a voice, encouraging them to have that voice. So if they look around at the landscape and they're like, what this office needs is somebody to organize a union here, maybe they should know how to do that. Tech's never, tech is never its own thing. It's always embedded in and then ripples back into society, and it reshapes society and reshapes us as a process. And I think being mindful of what's happening and do we approve of it and do we want it, or are there victims that need to be protected is, where our eyes should be.
I think, and what I'm hearing common themes is saying students, but then also at the same time, we also, I think, have to think of us as professionals, also understanding that our association is not just career centers, but it's also employers. And so my question, and I don't know if we have a lot of time, but my question is, then we need to have technological literacy or digital literacy as just professionals for ourselves. And I think, Chris, I want to start with you because I know we've always had this discussion where you were doing the, I don't know if it's the Fox, like you're saying, hey, we need to use this 10 years ago. And no one's like, no, it's all good. I don't need to know how to use this. I'm good. And then eventually we're using it. And so can we speak to us as professionals ourselves being, experimental or not being scared to tinker? I'm cool with that. I like messing with the remote until I figure out the buttons, and then, playing around on Twitter. Technology, I understand that sometimes technology scares people to use it, but I'm like, we'll figure it out. If I tinker, I make mistakes. So can you speak, both of y'all, to y'all's experience of utilizing it, learning it, and being, I'm not saying I know how to use everything, but being okay practicing it and being a practitioner of it before we teach someone else?
Yeah, Phil, you're right on. We shouldn't be afraid of it. The fact is, we've all adapted to stuff. Show me a career center that's still primarily paper-based in how it's communicating with and engaging with and tracking student points of contact. We adapt. And, as long as that's intentional adaptation on our part, that's great. But it is doing that experimenting. It's doing the, nobody wants to do Zoom because it's 2019 and the students want to keep showing up in our offices. And now suddenly you got to do Zoom because, forced lockdowns. And, how many of our offices have seen our in-person visits bounce back to pre-pandemic levels? I've seen less than 10 students in person since September when we were back in the office 4 days a week. My students are on campus. They don't want to come across campus. Why should they take a 10-minute walk each side of the appointment just to meet with me when they can hop on Zoom and then get back to their homework? They're busy. I get that. So, but it is that tinkering. It's that exploring, that being curious. But to be fair to us, we're a profession that, excuse me, tends to be most of our offices are under-resourced. Nobody's got time to I'm going to set aside 5 hours a week to play around with this new tech nobody's heard of. That's a crazy proposition. But having spaces where we can, collectively say, hey, this is this cool thing, check it out. Way back, it was 2007, 2008, I was collaborating with 2 colleagues from British Columbia for a NACE pre-conference on emerging technology. No, not shameless plug for myself. Look at my outdated technology mind. Yay. But one of them came to one of our meetings, and we were doing all this planning on a wiki and on conference calls. Because there wasn't even a Zoom. None of us had systems that could handle, live video streaming. And one of them came on and they're like, I just heard about this thing called Twitter. I'm going to email you the link so you can check it out. So the 3 of us have Twitter accounts from Twitter year 1. Before anyone had a clue as to what Twitter that was. And people were like, that's 140 characters. That's stupid. And it was like 2 months after we did that workshop, the wildfires in California had public works and public safety government entities in California using Twitter to push out notifications of wildfire shifts. It was the fastest mode of letting people know where things were. They had more granular data and more granular information out there. But it was just that one person saying to 2 other people, check out this weird thing. Nobody knows what to do with it. It's like, a number of months ago, people dropped the, TikTok is the new resume. Like, probably not, but it's a curious idea. As long as we don't all have to dance our resumes out, I'm cool with checking out what that might look like. So it's like asking the question, poking at the technology and just asking the question, being curious. And if we do it collectively, it's a heck of a lot more fun. And I think we get to more constructive and more creative answers too.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything Chris has just brought up. And I think that was like one of the reasons why I ended up joining the tech committee in the first place, was because I wanted to find a space where it wouldn't feel so overwhelming. And where do I start with looking for what's coming up, what's new, what are the areas that I need to be aware for my department, for my university, for myself, for the students. And having the collaborative space is really important, I think, especially as we are coming back to having more events and being able to share these ideas and information out. Like, as we've seen throughout the pandemic, plenty of new ideas are coming out from people that were locked in their houses for months, had these ideas, were like, yeah, let me create a new social network platform. Let me create new apps. So I think that coming back to this idea of collaboration, and it takes the kind of scariness out of the exploration aspect of it. And I am not somebody who comes from a very tech strong background. My undergraduate degree is in history. So I like to think of it as like, we're all these explorations, they went out, but they went out together to discover what else is out there. Now, there's always historical connotations behind all that, and there's actually things have already been discovered, but the metaphor standing that, if we go and we're doing this all as a team and a group, everybody has different perspective on things. Like, somebody who maybe is less tech savvy might think that, this is an easier way to break into something, or someone who is really on the forefront of something might think that this is not where everything else is going, and let's examine like why this is so different. So I think it's just very interesting to see how we can all do this together. And I think that that's a really great space that we're able to come together within the committee and bring it back to our own departments, our own offices, and be able to share it all out.
No, thank you, both of you. This is something hopefully, Casey, we can come to your campus and do more, but Eastern ACE kind of looking at what technology means now in the very near future, which could be 3 weeks from now, the way things are going sometimes, and beyond that. But can't thank you both enough for your work in spearheading the technology committee, getting us prepared for the conference, all the work behind the scenes. It's one of those things that tech is one of those areas that is everyone just relies on until it's not there, something's broken, and the work that you and your committee puts into making things just seamlessly happen for the organization should not go unnoticed and does not go unnoticed. So thank you to both of you. Tremendous time here today. I'm going to turn it back over to Phil to close out the show today, but just a reminder, get down to Atlantic City early and often. Like I said, I've been on the boardwalk the whole time. It is a lovely spot. So Casey, I know you're in the Philly region. It's probably like 3,000 degrees where you are. It's a balmy 78 right now here with a nice wind. The waves are behind me. The Borgata is just off to my right here. Can't wait to see you down here in Atlantic City, even if it's for a day. And if not, make sure that you're doing that follow-up, as Chris said. For those that won't be there, I won't be at the conference officially, but making sure you're making those connections to be sure that you can keep these conversations going. Thank you, both of you.
So yeah, thank you so much. I'm gonna pop them off and do some last minute announcements. So don't, I did this last time slowly. Thank you so much, Casey and Chris. I appreciate y'all. And so as Bob said earlier, just thinking about the conference, here's some tips. Make sure you join download the app. Make sure that you explore the conference website or the page on the website and see what sessions you want to do ahead of time. Send those LinkedIn connections ahead of time. Maybe make that shareable Google document or Microsoft 360 document to type your notes and share with your team. Connect with everyone. Connect with me. Shameless plug, Philip Wilkerson. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I love that. And then additionally, just if you're not able to make it, I think that I did this for NACE, which is a great tip. Follow the hashtag at least and join in the conversation virtually. I wasn't able to make it to NACE, but I was able to still connect and you say, wow, that was a great session. That's a great idea. And so if you cannot make it, use the technology to still feel plugged in and feel engaged in the community. Definitely you're going to see a lot of hashtags and tweets from me. I love Twitter on conference days. Man, I'll be going crazy. My tweets per day go up. So make sure to engage, connect. Thank you so much for those for listening or those that are going to be watching or listening to this later. This will also be available on YouTube and still on the Facebook page. We're having a great show and we're out. Thank you so much.